Hello, and welcome to another title clear. This time around, I'll be tackling the Pact title challenge with Doma. This dungeon gives 1.1 million EXP and has a chance of giving 30 plus points to plus limit broken units. I wouldn't particularly care about farming this dungeon if you care for plus points, as the plus limit breakthrough Colosseum is way easier to tackle and more time efficient. Obviously, if you do care about the XP, then maybe you do want to farm this dungeon. The Pact title dungeon will return later on as a technical and a limited time dungeon, just like the regular event rush dungeons. The technical will not give you that much XP, but will be accessible at all times, and the limited time dungeon version will give you the 1.1 million EXP. Again, I don't see much value in farming this dungeon, but now and in the future, at least clearing one of each version will net you 3 magic stones, and obviously the title. This title dungeon is fairly straightforward, but it does have a few gimmicks that might trip up some teams. Mainly on floor 9, as Hera will have your HP as a preemptive, and then at Super Resolve, she will give you a full dark board. Some teams like Sanamis and Freds are unable to override Dark Orbs, so you will need to find a solution. And by the way, I released a Fritz Clear when the title was ongoing in JP 2 months ago. Check it out if you want to tackle it with this leader. That team is actually faster than this Doma team since it has 100% Pierce uptime. The Doma team that I'll be showing only has one Giyu to help deal with void damage shields, so at times you will have to stall here and there. Giyu can also play an important role to help you tank large hits with his HP buff, but this team with these latents can tank the 2 biggest hits in the Pact title dungeon without the need of an HP buff. Here are the largest hits in the dungeon. I've grouped them by floors in case you're using units with Parallel Awakenings, and here are also some of the trickiest floor mechanics. The absorptions on floor 4 can be stalled out, but if you run a light or dark team, you will still need to have an out to that mechanic, as light and dark attribute absorptions will show up again later in the dungeon. The 5th floor voids your buffs as a preemptive, and will need to be brought down to Super Resolve on the 3rd turn, or else you'll be executed. When brought down to Super Resolve, Amakasumi will give you a bunch of minus orbs, pass its turn, and then gradually hit harder and harder. On his 3rd attack, he will hit you for 60 million damage. I think most meta teams can kill him from Super Resolve in 2 hits, so you ideally will only need 5 million effective HP to only tank 1 hit. But if you're unlucky with minus orbs, or if you accidentally blob them, you might also need to take his 2nd hit, which will be for 5.5 million. If Nell shows up on floor 6, you can avoid her Super Resolve Awoken Bind if you bring her down during the last turn of her damage absorption shield. Fair warning, instead of an Awoken Bind, she will start absorbing light and dark damage. As I mentioned, Hera on floor 9 will require a solution to an HP debuff preemptive and another one to a full dark board if your team does not override Dark Orbs. This specific team has enough HP to tank a hit while Kiriya's shield is up and while HP debuff, as long as you have the same latents and have at least 209k draw HP after transforming. You might need to stall on floor 9 if your cleric is your only HP buffer, and if you encounter Hera, as floor 10 will hit you with an Awoken Bind as a preemptive. I would definitely recommend running an HP buffer that is not your cleric. DQXU on floor 12 will hit you for almost 11 million damage, which this team can tank without an HP buff as long as you have Kiria's shield. The 13th floor will absorb light and dark damage and will hit you with a 1-turn unmatchable debuff for light and dark orbs. As for the boss floor, at Super Resolve, Metatron will enrage and then hit you for over 11 million damage on the following turn. This team can also tank that hit without an HP buff, but you might still want to use that active skill if you don't have at least 203,443 HP. Doma is fairly straightforward to play, just match a cross and another combo and you'll easily hit 10C. And that's basically all I'll be doing for this clear, though at times I do match a few other combos to bypass combo absorption shields. Also, at times I'll be stalling for Giyu since I'll be needing his Pierce effect, and to stall, you can just match a blob of 5 or more water orbs, as that will trigger Doma's leader skill damage reduction. This will also save you a few seconds, as you won't have to sit through the bonus combo animations when matching crosses. When it comes to equip replacements, you might have a lot of better alternatives than the ones that I'm showing here. I tried to include recently released assists, so hopefully you got most of these. In a nutshell, all the damage dealers would rather have an equip with a damage awakening. The Domas and Gyoko could use a Levitate Awakening, but when it comes to Doma, he doesn't really need it and can get away with a 10C or a 7C plus equip to fully triple cap. Gyoko will not do that much damage on his 3rd attribute without a Levitate Awakening. This is not a recently released unit, but check if you have Namiel, as that unit's equip will greatly boost Yoko's damage output, since on top of the Levitate Awakening, the equip will also change his sub-attribute to water. Giyu and the duo would prefer damage equips with haste active skills to help transform on the first turn. The duo will also benefit from an equip that changes his sub-attribute from fire to water, so Pat Island Clari's equip is a very good option. The duo's damage is a little bit lacking without a Levitate Awakening, but a 10C equip should be more than enough. To boost their damage against certain enemies, I did put Cat Killers on that unit, but if your team has more than enough bulk to meet HP thresholds, you could change his Super Awakening from all stats to a Cross Plus to make him easily triple cap. Oh, and that reminds me, this team comp, as you'll notice, is only plus 297, but if you have already or are close to 891 in some of these units, you might be able to freely switch the duo and Giyu's Super Awakening to boost their damage. You will notice later on that the team I'm showing has a lot more bulk than this team, and that's because most of my team is plus 891. But if you use the same latents as I am showing here, you won't have the need to 891 any units. Kyria could have any equip Awakening-wise, but a haste will definitely help you transform on the first turn. I went with Artora's equip because a 3-turn Pierce effect is very nice at the beginning of the dungeon. This way, you won't have to stall a turn on the third floor for Giyu if you use him on the first floor and one-hit KO that on the second floor. When looking for replacements, do make sure that the team has enough bulk to meet some of the aforementioned HP thresholds. Also, it's important to keep track of how many skill boosts the team has, since the Doma team will not be able to tank a single hit without transforming and matching at least 5 water orbs. Stacking OEs will also help against some enemies, as you can encounter some minus orb skyfall debuffs or enemies like Amakosumi who will minus a bunch of your orbs. I have done 2 other clears with these 2 teams on stream. You can find the timestamp links in the description below, but as you'll notice, the Doma team is almost identical. Here are other teams that my friend and I have made that can also clear this dungeon. We wanted to use Obanai as he will net you more EXP due to his pre-transformation leader skill. Like I mentioned before, Dark and Light teams will have to face a few extra mechanics like the attribute absorptions and unmatchable debuffs found in a few floors. And Dark teams will especially suffer when fighting the boss, as Metatron has Dark damage, so that team will feel a little bit sluggish. Alright, that does it for this video. Good luck tackling this title challenge. Hopefully this video helps you, and if you made any replacements, let us know in the comments below, as maybe that will help other people that need more alternatives. Thank you guys for watching, and a special thanks go out to Ages Number 1, Pat Brostick, Breastfeeding Obama, Dark Silencers, Eddie Ryan, Exen, and Wave for supporting the channel. I'd really appreciate it. I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.